Hello, and welcome to episode number 11 of the Rabe Creations podcast. My name's Nicole, and I'm coming to you from Calgary, Alberta here in Canada, where I live with my husband Barry, my son Riley, and my beautiful, wonderful rescued Rottweiler named Grace. Let me see. It's been a little over 2 weeks since I last recorded a podcast, and in that time, the weather here has gotten absolutely beautiful. It has been above 30 degrees for most of the week. I am a heat lover, so yeah, it is a good thing. It is making podcasting a little uncomfortable because in Calgary we generally don't have long stretches of weather where we would require air conditioning. Therefore, we have never gotten it in our house, so we were relying on fans. Unfortunately, as I have found out, I can't run a fan and podcast at the same time because you can't hear me. So in between segments of the podcast, I will be cranking the fan, and hopefully it won't get too overly hot in here. Who am I fooling? It's going to get overly hot in here. So I have been on holidays for about a week and a couple of days now, on my 2-week summer holidays, which has been very nice. It's just a staycation, but sometimes that's the best kind of vacations there are. And it has allowed me to become incredibly prolific in my crochet, to the point where it's a little frightening. I believe this episode is going to be called Hats, Hats, All the Hats. Because when it's plus 30 degrees out, and you're sitting on the deck, trying desperately to stay cool, the most logical thing to be crocheting are winter hats, right? At least in my world, it seemed to work out that way. So I have done up a whole bunch of hats. They haven't quite made my Etsy shop yet. I am sort of stocking up for fall shows as well as the Etsy shop. Speaking of the Etsy shop, I am running a sale in my Etsy shop right now, and that is Rabe Creations on Etsy. I'm running summer in July, like a lot of other people. So there is a 10% off all my stock right now until the end of July. Hopefully that'll clear out a few pieces so that I can start putting in my fall pieces. Let me see. One last other little bit is I was terribly ill last week. In typical me fashion, everybody else gets sick when they're working so they can, use some sick days. Me, nah. I'll stay good and healthy at work, start to get that little tickle in my throat leading up to my holidays, and then spend the first 4 or 5 days of holidays feverish in plus 30 weather. That wasn't as fun as it is now in the plus 30 weather that I am feeling so much better. So moving on with things, now that I have rambled on a little bit, usually we talk about what I'm wearing. What I'm wearing today is as little as possible. It is much too hot to try and wear anything crocheted today. So there's nothing crochet on me today. All right, I think that's all of the introduction I have for you. It was a longer one today. So let's move right into finished projects. There's a lot of them. All right, so on to some finished projects. As I said, I have been working on a lot of hats in the plus 30 weather to get prepared for fall shows and to fill up my Etsy shop a little bit for fall. And one of the ideas I had for this year, for a bit of a attention grabber maybe at the fairs, at the craft shows, because let's face it, at craft shows it can be very overwhelming for the customer, and it's kind of nice to have something in your booth that, is a little bit different. So I'm doing Daddy and Me and Mummy and Me hat sets. So let me show you a couple of them that I have come up with so far. So this is the first little set. So that is the adult male hat. So that's the daddy hat. And it will come with the mini-me version, the child-sized hat. And the child-sized hat in this set is probably about a size, you know, would fit, you know, from a 2-year-old to probably through about an 8-year-old. There's quite a bit of stretch in it. Now this hat is a bit of a slouchy hat, more of a skateboard style hat. And it came from, let me just grab my show notes here because I can't remember them all. It came from Crochet Winter Warmers, the October 2017 edition of that magazine. I did do another hat set from that magazine as well. I'll show the magazines at the end. So that is the first Daddy and Me hat set. The second Daddy and Me hat set I think is my favorite. So this is based on a YouTube tutorial by the Crochet Crowd, and it is the adult male version, and again, the child's version, about a, I would say, a 2-year-old again through a 5 or 6-year-old. It is a little bit smaller than the skater hat. It has some really neat cabling detailing at the top, and it is incredibly stretchy. I also like the fact that because it's all done in front post double crochets, that it has created a super thick and squishy fabric. So these are going to be very, very warm, and I think they're just adorable. So that's Daddy and Me set number 2. Now for the Mummy and Me set, the first one I chose is a pattern available on as a YouTube tutorial as well, and it is by Repeat Crafter Me, and it's a messy bun hat because those are still very popular in my area. So it's the hat with the hole in the top so your ponytail can stick out, and as someone with long hair I do have to say these are amazing. I have a real problem with toques or beanies staying on my head because of my hair. It forces them off and it's not good, but by being able to put your ponytail out the top, it stops that from happening, so I love them. So there is the mum-sized, and there is the child-sized. So again, a Mommy and Me set this time of the messy bun hat. There will be some other offerings of the hat sets as I make them. So far that's what? 6 hats. Then we have some apple hats. How cute are these? So this is not a hat set. These are both children's sizes. So we have a I call it the little kid size and the bigger kid size. Bigger kid again is going to be, you know, up to about that, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, and the smaller one, of course, is an infant size. I think these are adorable. Great little fall hat because it is an apple, complete with stem and leaf. How cute are those? Now this pattern is out of a magazine, and it is out of the Love of Crochet magazine, the Fall 2017 edition. Now this has inspired me, and I am currently working on my own pattern, and it may be a pattern that I actually publish, and it will be a beehive hat, so a little beehive with some bees on it. So stay tuned for that. That's kind of exciting. I've never released a pattern into the wild before, so it'll be interesting to see if that goes over well. And finally, well, not really, I'm not showing you all the hats I made. I'm actually holding a couple back because I'm going to run out of time. So the final 2 hats that I'm going to show you today are both lady-sized, and they are a cabled crochet hat. This one is slightly bigger than the blue one, not that it's a different size, it's just different wool gauge. So this yarn was a wee bit thicker than this yarn. The pattern for this one came from the Crochet Winter Warmers October 2017 magazine. one of the changes that I made to the pattern. This one does not have quite as many repeats as is actually called for in the pattern. It was getting to be massive. Again, the gauge of the yarn is thicker than this one, even though they're both rated as a 4 weight on the ball bands. Just shows you the difference that you can have and why gauge is so important. Did I gauge swatch for these? Heck no! Why not just wing it? So there's this one in the beige with the darker brown. And the pom-poms that I've put on both of these are my washable pom-poms. In the pattern, it did call for a traditional pom-pom. I prefer these ones because they can go into the washing machine and the dryer with no problems. And I say that because these are both, actually, every hat I have shown you is made out of acrylic. Not just out of acrylic, but completely out of stash yarn. I have been stash busting my butt off. Which has been fantastic. I am really working through some of my stash, but as you'll see later on, I seem to be replacing it as quickly as I'm working through it, but that's another story. So I also completed some socks. So I did show these as a began project last podcast, and they are done. So these are my pearl socks, I believe is what the pattern is called. Yeah, pearl socks by Vita Apollo. And they're from the Inside Crochet Magazine issue 101. The yarn is by Polka Dot Creek, and it is their basic sock base, or sparkle sock base, I'm sorry. There is a fair degree of sparkle to these socks. And this color is sky blue, and I adore this color. I know I raved about it last time, and I'm going to keep on raving about it because these are amazing. The pattern worked up very well. There were some things in the pattern that I would probably change if I did them again. It's the first time I've ever done a sock from toe through cuff with just using one skein of hand-dyed yarn. I did not do contrasting toes. I did not do contrasting heels. And I was really nervous about running out of yarn, about the yarn chicken. And I ended up with that much. So it's not like it was a terrible yarn chicken, but it was still a little disconcerting. Now this yarn was a skein of, let me see, there was 463 yards to the 100 grams. So it was a slightly larger skein, I think, than most, but that's all right. So back to the pattern, sorry. If I was to make these again, I would probably, oh my goodness, I'm getting stuck on my sock blocker. No, don't pull my stitches. If I was to do these again, I would probably work the foot in the single crochet that it's worked in. I really love this toe. Work the foot in the single crochet that it's worked in till about here, and then go to an extended single crochet. The reason for that is this sock is very tight through the foot, through the top of the foot where it attaches to the cuff. Not so that they're unwearable, I can still wear them, but they are tighter than I like. So if I make these again, there will definitely be a couple of rows of the extended single crochet, and it's just a little bit stretchier than a regular single crochet. I love how these heels turned out. So it is a ribbed detail on the heels, and I love that. Isn't that beautiful? And then the cuff is a laced pattern. Yeah, I really, really do like these socks. Like I said, my only real concern is with the tightness across the top of the foot, and I believe that could be alleviated with just switching to an extended single crochet in those last couple of rounds. So that was the pearl sock, and I have another sock, a pair of socks for my box of socks. So finally, in the completed projects pile for this podcast is this market bag. Now, this market bag is not an available pattern yet. It was a pattern test that I did for Stitches and Loops. So that's Haley Poulton Poulton, and she's calling this the Easy Breezy bag. So it is still in the process of being tested, you know, I've given her my reflections and suggestions, and she's rewritten the pattern a couple of times now to reflect people's tests and what they found when they were making it. Now, as you can see, it does have a solid base, then gets into some mesh, and then a solid cuff around the top and some great handles. It is done in 100% cotton, and as you can probably tell, I stash busted again. Look at me stash busting. So I stash busted for this one as well. So what I've been doing is every different weight of yarn I work with, I have a magic ball. And when the amount of yarn I have is no longer what I would consider a workable amount for a project, I roll it onto that weight or that content of magic ball. So this was my cotton magic ball that I used about half of to make this tote bag. And I actually really like how it turned out. I like the scrappiness of stuff. I think it gives it that real handmade boho look. But definitely be on the lookout for this one. I'll let you know in a future podcast when this pattern releases, because wow, it is going to be a great little pattern for people. I quite enjoyed it, and it's her first pattern, so way to go, Haley. So that is it for the finished projects that I am going to show you today. There was a lot of them. There were some others that I completed, but I'll save those for next week because, well, I'm going to run out of time here. So those are the projects for this week. So that was a plethora of hats, some socks, and a market bag. Alrighty, so the next segment is going to be my projects on the go. However, there's not a lot of them because I keep finishing them all. So it'll be a shorter segment. Alright, so moving into my current projects, as I said, not as many to show as completed projects. I am still working on the wedding blanket for my son and future daughter-in-law. Haven't done much work on that over the past couple of weeks, so no point in pulling that out. Same is true for my hydrangea stripes blanket, the baby blanket. I do have to make a trip to the yarn store, Michael's, to get some more appropriately weighted yarn. It's more of a sport weight or a DK weight. I believe I need more white and perhaps more pink in the snuggly wuggly yarn is what I think I am going to use. I have done a few of the pieces for the side panels, but again, I won't pull that out until there is a significant amount of progress to show you. So currently on my hook is a pattern that I am kind of making up as I go, and it is going to be a Halloween treat bag, so something that the kids can carry from house to house on Halloween night to collect their treats. So far this is the base of a bag. It should be, it's going to be a tote bag type of bag, and more of like a child or toddler size. So I anticipate that it's going to be about that tall. So I would say about a foot, a little over 12 inches tall, with some nice sturdy handles. So far this is the base of the bag in the variegated purple color, and then I am going to stripe black and green throughout the rest as the body of the bag, and then the handles will be in a purple. So that is going to be the first one, and I also have a bag in orange and black in the works as well. So that will be the next one once this one is done. And all of these things, as I said, are going to be both on my Etsy shop and as stock in the upcoming fall fairs and fall craft shows that I will be doing. So that is one of my current projects. What else was I going to talk? Oh, so the other project that I haven't started yet, I am still looking to find the perfect pattern. So Lacey over on Hooked on Owls, the Hooked on Owls podcast, is running an awesome cowl. She is running for her birthday an 80s cowl, which I think is really exciting because, you know, the 80s were kind of my teenage years. That was my glory years, I call them. So the idea behind this cowl was that you would make something that was inspired by something in the 80s. So my first thought went to movies, and I thought about, you know, some of the movies I continue to love from the 80s. Goonies and Lost Boys being the two that jumped to mind immediately. And then as I was sort of thinking about what kind of a pattern I could do to support that, I had a moment of inspiration. I am going to make lace, crocheted lace type fingerless gloves, inspired by Madonna. How more 80s can you get than that? So I am on the lookout now for a pattern for fingerless gloves in a lace type weight that I will be able to enter into that cowl, because I just couldn't resist joining into a cowl that is based on the 1980s. Alrighty, so really that's about all I have to show you for current projects. Like I said, it's going to be a shorter segment. When I do little projects like I have been doing with the hats, and I've gotten some fingerless gloves done and that sort of thing, because they're short little projects, there's rarely something that's a work in project because it is done. Yeah, they happen quickly, which is good. It's nice instant gratification projects. Yeah, so that's about it for my finished, my current projects. And the next segment, you may need to pause now, take a break, grab a coffee, you know, whatever it is you need to do, because I've bought a few things. As I said, I've been stash busting and feeling really good about myself, but on the flip side of that, I have also been acquiring a fair bit of new yarn. It's because I'm on holidays and we didn't go anywhere, so I'm buying yarn instead, and that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Actually, just it was opportunity, a lot of it. So yeah, I will show that to you next. Alright, welcome back. I hope you're prepared. There's a few new additions this week. So, let's go in chronological order, shall we? Starting with one of the most dangerous things that can happen. A new yarn store opened near me. It's really actually nice to see all these little independent yarn stores opening up. Yeah, it's kind of like the indie bookstore. The indie yarn stores, they can specialize in the hand-dyed yarns and the imported yarns and all of those things that you can't get at the big box stores. And yarn is just one of those things. It's so nice to see it in person before you purchase it. So yeah, I'm all for these local yarn stores. So the newest yarn store to open near me is called Yarn Twisters, and they are over in a neighborhood close to mine called Mahogany. They do have a website, www.yarntwisters.ca. Go in and take a look and see what they're all about. I will try and post some pictures of the yarn shop, of my visit at the yarn shop, at the end of this video if you're interested. So, the first thing I noticed at the new yarn shop is that it's not huge. It's small, it's intimate. It does have a little seating area at the front where you're welcome to bring in your projects. I was also very pleased that they seemed to be extremely welcoming of a variety of different types of fiber crafts. So there was one other customer in the store when I was there, and it was during the weekday, and she was a needle felter who was stocking up on yarns. She's running some classes, and then I was there representing crochet. So in the time I was there weren't any knitters even in the shop, and the woman who was running the shop, she's one of the co-owners, and she was very, very welcoming of the crochet community. She was more than willing to have me take some pictures of the shop, shared the fact that I have a podcast with her, showed her some pictures of finished projects that I've done. So yeah, it was a very nice experience. So they are carrying a number of the Sheepias yarn. I sure hope I said that right. I hear it pronounced so many different ways, but I'm calling it Sheepias. I have been coveting the whorls for feels like forever. And again, it was just one of those things where I really, really, really wanted to see it, feel it, touch it before I purchased it, because they aren't inexpensive. Guess what they have? They have a bunch of the different Sheepias, and they had some whorls. So this is the one I picked up. Starts from a black and gradients all the way out through grays and into white. It is called Licorice Yum Yum, and I was ecstatic. So these are cotton acrylic blends, and there is 1,000 meters to 225 grams. Yeah, so these are they're hefty whorls. Quite a very, very fine weight. I would say fingerling, a light fingerling weight yarn. There have been so many patterns that have come out requiring the Sheepias yarn that I wanted to try, and I couldn't buy them online. I don't know why. I buy a lot of things online, but this was one I was just a little bit nervous about. But now that I've gotten my hands on one, they are gorgeous. So this is the Licorice Yum Yum. Also from Yarn Twisters, I picked up 3 balls of the Drops Nord. This is, I believe they just do colored numbers. Yeah, color 16. So not a whole lot of imagination goes into the naming of their yarns. And it is a alpaca polyamide wool blend. And I just thought this would look really, really good with the leftover Drops Flora that I had from my my cross top, the open weave cross top that I did. I just think those 2 colors will look really nice together in a project. So I did get 3 balls of the Nords, or the Drops Nord yarn in color 16. But beautiful, beautiful yarn. So that was my visit to the new yarn shop. Then on Saturday, most Saturdays we do try and get out to the Millerville Farmers Market. I know I've spoke about it before, and we were there this past Saturday. Beautiful weather for a farmers market. And while we did pick up, you know, a lot of produce and that sort of thing, some amazing butter tarts, oh my goodness, I also found yarn. My husband says I can find yarn anywhere. So the first stop I made was at a booth run by the Fiber Arc. Now these are not just local dyers, they're local producers. So these people, actually both of the yarns that I bought, are growing raising the animals. Yeah, it's all happening in one place. So this is merino wool, and it's hand dyed in a tonal blue. It is a fairly thick weight. I would call it a bulky. Definitely thicker than a worsted weight, so I will definitely call it a bulky weight. The color is sky blue, a blue tonal, and I really, really like this. Smells very sheepy. It is not superwash, of course, so it will have to be hand washed with even more care. So hand wash cool, lay flat to dry, which of course I would do with all my hand crocheted wool garments and product. Yeah, this is saying that it's a light to medium weight, and I say nope. From a gauge thickness, that's at least a bulky, a worsted to a bulky. And this, I believe, is going to be a hat. This just screams hat to me. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful yarn, beautiful color. Then from a little bit further down, and I believe I have talked about this booth before, they're there all the time. It's the Redneck Goat Ranch. Catherine Langstaff is the proprietress. And again, they are producers of yarn. Not just dyers, but full-on producers. Now from her, I bought 4 skeins of undyed wool. So this is hand spun, 100% undyed wool. So this is just the color that it's coming off the animals, and I think that's amazing. Now this is definitely rustic to its feel. Not sure how good it would be as a next to skin project, but you know, potentially for a scarf, as long as it wasn't a scarf that you were planning to wear on your neck. But then again, even with the heat going on right now, I'm not reacting to it the way that I thought I would. Now this smells sheepy. I just think it's amazing that these colors are the colors that are coming directly off the animals. You can feel the lanolin in this product. I can feel it on my hands already. It is going to be a dream to work with. My hands are going to be so soft after working with this. So yes, 4 skeins of that. And you would think, Nicole, that's enough. And I thought that too. And then yesterday, while I was sitting out on the deck, crocheting some hats, I got a notification through Facebook that a local maker was doing a bit of a de-stash. And in her de-stash was some Sheepia's whirls. So I jumped on it. Unfortunately, I didn't jump quite quickly enough. I didn't get all 4 whirl cakes. I only got 2 of them, although I did tell her if her other buyer falls through and doesn't show up, because you know how sometimes that happens with these sort of you know, Kijiji or those types of sales, to give me a call, because I'll definitely take the other 2 as well. And I got 2 more Sheepia's whirls. So, oh my goodness, now I've got so many. So the first one I'm going to show you is this one. It is different shades of purple. Actually, it starts with almost like a dusty rose and works its way on out to almost a plummy purple. This colorway is called Tasty Nom Nom. So whereas the one that I had bought from the yarn store is Licorice Nom Nom, this one is Tasty Nom Nom. And I am a huge purple fan, so this will be right up my alley. And then I also got this one. Oh my goodness, how gorgeous is this? And I actually think this is going to be a wonderful one to have, because I was thinking of my dress for my son's wedding, which I am hoping to have in gray and pink tones. I'm looking at making my own dress, sewing my own dress, and I would like to do a shawl. Gray and pink tones. So this very well could be the cake that becomes the shawl for my son's wedding. This one starts out in sort of a pink, goes into a lighter pink, so a darker pink to a lighter pink, to a gray, to a darker gray, and ends on a very dark gray, almost black. And this one is called Watermelon Hellraiser, which I think is kind of an hysterical name. But all of these are the whirls, so they are all that cotton acrylic blend. How pretty is that? I really like this this gradient. I think this is going to be beautiful, and I really am leaning towards this being the foundation of my outfit for my son's wedding. So it was meant to be. Well, that really is the end of my newly acquired yarn for the podcast this week. So maybe not as much as I had thought, but still a lot. Like I said, I was so glad to be stash busting, and then I was sort of buying as quickly as I was busting. But that's okay, because it will all be put to great use in the coming weeks. Alrighty, so we are approaching the final segment of today's podcast, where I will be introducing you to a new book. We will be taking a trip to my bookshelf. Coming up next. Alright, so moving into the final segment of today's podcast, and we're taking a trip to my bookshelf. So this week I am talking to you about a young adult book by Marisha Pessl. I believe that's how you say her last name. I apologize profusely if that is pronounced incorrectly. The book is called Neverworld Wake, and it is a recently published young adult novel. Now, a little bit of background about this book. I love one of this author's previous books called Night Film. It is one of my all-time favorite books. It is dark, and it is gritty, and it is a whirlwind of confusion. That is the best way I can describe the book. In a good way. A whirlwind of confusion in a good way. So when I found out that she was releasing a new book, I was extremely excited. Yes, I could hardly wait. When I found out it was a young adult book, I was a little nervous. The previous book of hers that I liked so much has a lot of adult theme to it. It is very gritty in its telling. The main character, by halfway through the book, the main character has no idea what's going on, and you as the reader also have no idea what's going on. So you are totally taken along with that character on the ride of the novel. And I was really worried that to make it appropriate for a young adult audience, that the storytelling style of this author would be watered down. I am happy to say that although it is watered down content-wise, so there's not nearly the adult theming that there was in the previous book, the style that the author writes in, that Marisha writes in, is intact, and I love it. Some of the reviews of the book have been that, it's not as good as her previous books, that it wasn't a great book. I think you need to read this knowing that it's a young adult book and expecting it to be a young adult book. You are not going to get the same grittiness, the same topics covered in a young adult book, or in my opinion you shouldn't, as you would in an adult intended novel. Now that being said, what is this novel even about? Well, it does have a teenager as its main character, a young girl who is trying to figure things out. She had a situation in her life where a boyfriend, we know from the beginning of the book, her boyfriend is dead. Implied that it was suicide, but maybe it wasn't. She has sort of ostracized herself from her group of friends since this occurred, and she is making an attempt to reconnect with her group of friends. In that reconnection, she gets stuck in a time loop. They all do. So this is the story of that time loop and how they fight their way back out of the time loop. So it does have the fantastical elements that I tend to appreciate in a book, and it does have some darkness and some grittiness, just not to the degree that her adult novels do. So if you've read Night Film or her other book, Topics in Calamity Physics, I believe it was called, very strange title. If you've read either of those books and enjoyed them, I do believe you will enjoy this book, as long as you go into it recognizing that it is a young adult appropriate book. I really liked the characters in this one. They were a little over the top. They were a little, they were characters. And I believe that in her Night Film book, I had that same feeling. The characters weren't necessarily believable as the person who lived next door. They hit me more as movie type characters. So they're archetypes of what they are supposed to be representing. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this one. It does have a little bit of a twist to the end. Sort of an unexpected ending. For me anyway. I didn't see it coming. Maybe you will. But definitely worth the read. It did not take me long to get through this book. I mean, it was a couple of days of evening reading. But that is her style. Her style is very readable, especially now that it's being toned for the young adult audience. And I don't want to say toned down, but toned for the young adult audience, because I read her other books extremely quickly as well. But yeah, definitely worth looking into. So that's Never World Wake by Marisha Pessl, P-E-S-S-L. She's an American author living in the US. Well worth taking a look at. All right, so that brings us to the end of podcast number 11. I would invite you to come and join us on Ravelry. We do keep getting, members trickling in. There is a thread on the Ravelry page, sort of questions and answers thread, where I will answer questions, within reason of course, on the podcast. So if you've got a question that you would like answered, please by all means enter your question there, and I will attempt to answer it on the podcast. You can also find me on Instagram. I tend to be fairly active on Instagram as Nicole_Rabe Creations. I would love for you to come visit me at my Etsy shop, and that's Rabe Creations on Etsy. I also have a Facebook page, Rabe Creations on Facebook, so Rabe Creations pretty well everywhere. So thank you, if you have stuck with it this long. To all of my continuing subscribers, thank you so much for hitting that like button and hitting that subscribe button and coming back week after week to hear me ramble on. And for any new viewers, if you liked the content you saw today, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give it a thumbs up. I do try and answer all of the comments that happen underneath. And below, also in show notes, will be the links to anything that I mentioned on the podcast. As long as I can link to it, I will. Alrighty, so that wraps it up for the day. I hope you have a fantastic couple of weeks, and I will see you very, very soon. Happy hooking. Bye.